Hello and welcome to Hopeful Conversations. I'm Vicky Montague, and today I am joined by the adorable Debra Simmonds. And Debra has got the most hopeful story, I think, that I have heard on a number of occasions. And every time I've heard it, my mind has been slightly more blown by what you have to share. It's something that I realised hadn't been spoken about on this podcast. And given the sort of shocking statistics around domestic abuse, domestic violence, troublesome relationships, whatever you want to call it, I thought it was about time that we had a hopeful conversation around it. And you are the number one person, the number one go-to, as somebody who has had experience of being in a, I don't even want to label it. I don't want to use words because I don't know what words would be appropriate. But a relationship that was less than desirable, I guess. And where you're at now, I suppose that whole journey, that whole story around what you've experienced and what's different now, I think is just so incredibly hopeful. And for anyone who is in a relationship that's less than healthy, what you have to share is probably going to be slightly challenging.
Yeah, maybe.
And at the same time, will deliver hope.
Absolutely.
In spades, in seeing that there is a way out, if you like, a different way of experiencing everything. So I'm just going to hand over to you because your story is amazing and I don't want to take up any time me rabbiting on about you. Thank you for being here.
Oh no, thank you very much for asking me to be a guest. And I really like sharing my story because of the hope that it holds. Today, as we are recording this, I have been out for lunch with my daughter, and she has 3 children, and one of them is at school and the other 2 were there, and we just had a really nice, we were laughing, joking, we had a really nice time together. It was a really nice lunch. It was lovely to be with my grandchildren, lovely to be with my daughter. And there was a time when I had no relationship with my daughter whatsoever. There was a time when I thought we would never be friends, that we would never, that I would never have that kind of relationship with her because of what she had experienced as a child and growing up, the abuse, the violence in our home, those kinds of things. And so even now, to me, I've been out of that relationship a long time and there's been a lot of healing. I'm way down the line on it. But even I knew I was coming to speak to you, and I'm sat there with my daughter, I'm looking, and I even said to her, I'm going to speak about this. And I've got another daughter and a son, so I have 3 children. And all of us, even now after all of these years, will now and again just kind of say, wow, it's amazing how healthy and happy and secure we are as a family, as they are as human beings, as lovely adults now out in the world, which to me is where the hope really comes from. Because I know there was one point we were having some counselling after I'd left the relationship, and I was told during that counselling that my children were damaged, basically, from their upbringing. They were damaged and they would never be okay. They'd got PTSD. They were all sorts of things I was told was going on. And at that point, I was told the best that I could hope for was that they would learn coping mechanisms to be able to, for their anxiety, for all of this kind of thing. So to see all 3 of them, I mean, don't get me wrong, they are what is a normal human being? But they is there such a thing? But they have their ups and downs. My daughter falls out with her husband sometimes, or all of the normal stuff that we do as human beings. But they also have a great time. They're also really well adjusted, amazing adults. And, you know, considering their upbringing, a little bit like you, because I see this so differently now, I'm not really sure what words to put on it. But when I was rescued, if you want to call it, from my home at the time and taken into a refuge because of the violence and everything that was going on in my home, the way that it was spoken about then was a very abusive, with both physical and mental abuse going on in the home. And so, you know, if that's the world you live in and that's the word, that's what it was like. And you know, typically the kinds of things that would go on in the house was there would just be rules, and on a daily basis, you know, in the morning my husband would kind of decide and potentially tell us what the rules were this day. And it might be that we weren't allowed to go into a certain room in the house, it might be that we weren't allowed to eat certain foods, it might be that the kids weren't allowed to go to, who knew, you know, it could literally be anything. And so trying to navigate living in that, for fear of what might happen, and you didn't know who it would happen to and what it might be. You have no idea, you know, where the anger is going to come from, what it might be. And so you're living basically on red alert. It's kind of, and how I see it now, in one sense, and certainly at more normal levels, what I see, there's something Byron Katie says, and if you don't know Byron Katie, look up who she is. She's an amazing lady. But there's something that Byron Katie says, and she says, don't be careful because you might hurt yourself. And what I see that she is pointing to in that is, we as human beings have a built-in mechanism that is of the moment that tells us what to do in any given situation. And what I believe she is pointing to is saying, you don't have to be on red alert and wonder what's going to happen next, because this system will kick in the moment when it's needed. And what I can see, the way that I lived was completely, you know, with no belief, no, you know, absolutely like weighing up every single little thing, walking on eggshells, worrying about everything, not living at all from my inner knowing of okayness, not one bit. And I see people, you know, it's what we do, you know, when we get insecure, when we get scared, that's what we do. So the one thing that I see, if you like, is how I ended up in that situation, and how I know a situation like that could never happen to me again. So I ended up there because I was incredibly insecure. And with hindsight, looking back now, I can see a throwaway comments, things, I guess, things people said when I was a child that if I had taken no notice of, would have had no impact on me. I did take notice of them, as we do. I am very, very like my grandma, my dad's mum. She's no longer with us now, but I am very like her. And my mum and her did not have a great relationship. And everybody would tell me I'm like my grandma. I am, it's true. And then I would hear my mum in separate conversations saying that she didn't like my grandma. So I got the idea that there was something wrong with me, that I couldn't be me. And my grandma was loud and outgoing, and you know, so it was like, you can't be that person. So I tried not to be me. I tried, you know, now I know that was a mistake. I tried very, very hard not to be me. So by the time I grew up and got to the place of being in a relationship, I was really insecure and terrified to be myself, and just wanted to have this man who I loved love me. So there was no way I was going to be me, because clearly I was not good enough. So, and he came to the relationship. He's also very, very insecure. Obviously, I can't tell you what was going on inside of him, but what I do know was that his dad died very, very suddenly when he was 9. And so basically his dad suddenly disappeared out of his life. And back then, you didn't really talk to children about what was going on. Nobody really sat him down and told him what was going on. And he thought he was going to come home one day and his mum wasn't going to be there. So he started to try and control everything so that he could keep his mum safe, so that he could be safe. He'd got an older brother, and actually he was also trying to keep his older brother safe. And so by the time we met, he was a really, really nice guy, but he was really insecure and really afraid. And I don't think he even knew that. And very afraid that I would leave. So he did everything he could to try and make me stay in, and from a bully energy, I guess. You know, it was like if not letting me go out. I mean, the levels of control were unbelievable. And so it was literally an absolute disaster, that the two of us together, and what we created. And we had some amazing children, but they had a terrible childhood. You know, some terrible things went on. And none of this excuses the behaviors and what went on, but it helps me. I can understand that, you know, I could see I didn't know how to overcome what I had heard and the fact that I didn't think I was good enough. And it's like, so how was he supposed to? You know? And one of the things that I see in the work that I do now and what I share, it is about learning to understand ourselves and understand how our minds work so that we can do that. Because, and the other thing that I see around these relationships, and any relationships, what I see is it does not take two to tango. I can see in that my relationship, if I had changed, he would have changed. Now, would it have become a healthy relationship? Would we have stayed together? I don't know. And I'm not saying that. But what I can see is, I've watched it now. I'm in an amazing relationship now with a gorgeous man. It's a really, really healthy relationship. But I can see my relationship works because of who I am. Like I don't put anything on him. It's about me. And if I want something different in my relationship, I change, and it works amazingly. So the challenging part, I guess, is to kind of say, I can see I was in that situation because of who I was. And I can see anyone who is in any kind of unhealthy relationship, there is things that they are doing. I think is it Eleanor Roosevelt that says nobody can make us feel any way without our permission. And I can see nobody can be abused without giving permission. And you know, we can explore that if you want to, or you know, if there's anyone on here kind of shaking their head and going whatever, I'm very, very happy to. I'm very reachable. I'm very happy to have a conversation about exactly what I mean about that. But so that's kind of in a nutshell. Coming across the principles, learning to understand my mind, learning to understand the role I played, changing my role, you know, changing who I am, coming absolutely to a place where there is nothing I love more now than being me, has completely changed everything. And, you know, as I said, my kid's great, my family is great, ups and downs, but, you know, it's amazing. So.
And there's so much in there. And like I say, every time I hear your story, there's just so many depths to it, I guess. And I think, well, there's two things that really jumped out at me, and they are the bits that are most tricky, I guess, for people to get their heads around. And I think it would be helpful to have a little delve around there, because there were two things that you said. The first one was, if I change, then they change. Who I'm being determines who they're being. And then I guess the sort of second part of that is, and I'm sure it's a question that will be coming up to people listening to this, okay, so how the hell do I change? Like, okay, so I've had these things happen to me in the past, and I've had these experiences, and so I'm justifiably, understandably operating the way that I do. So when I heard you say, you know, your mum had basically had an outward dislike of your grandmother, and you knew that you were like her, you know, it's completely understandable why you would, as a small child, go, oh, I don't want to have any of those attributes. Then they're not desirable. Mum doesn't like them. I mustn't do that. So all of that's understandable, and I guess what's fascinating is that question of, well, how do you change that? How do you change so that someone else changes, and how does that even work?
Yeah, great question. I guess ultimately there has to be a desire to change. I know, you know, I was in this relationship for over 20 years, and I can see there was suddenly a moment where I knew that was it. I wasn't doing this anymore. It had got too much. And I've worked a fair bit. I worked for Women's Aid for quite a while after, you know, after I left my relationship. And I see time and time again, there has to be a readiness in the person, because it's like anything. It's like giving up smoking. It's like any of these things, isn't it? We have to, with, and even with a ton of evidence, you know, with and our family wanting and people saying there's no way, until we want to do it, until something switches inside us, to me it's not happening. You know, so that a desire to change. And I think once there truly is a desire, and I think sometimes we might go, oh God, you know, I don't want it to be like this, but there isn't, that there has to be a real desire in there for this to be different. So that, I guess, is the first step. And as I said, I talked about an inner guidance that we have. So there aren't, you know, 10 steps to come from here to here. You know, this is how, if you do these 10 things, it will happen. But I think once we have a true desire and begin to listen to ourselves and follow our intuition and our own inner knowing, and that is much, much easier. I was actually thinking about that when I was in the car today, when I was driving. What I see time and time again is how much, if we are, the universe that we live in, God, the power behind life, whatever you call it, it's an intelligent universe. And once we have this desire to change, there is something that goes on with this power, which isn't a power that's separate from us. It is a power that is within us. It starts to guide us. And I know people will sometimes, oh, you know, but it doesn't happen quick enough, and it's not like this. But and my, you know, the changes in me took a long time. It didn't happen overnight. It was a journey. But I can see over time, gradually, I would have insights. I would see things, something within me would change. You know, I would have conversations with people, things would show up, books that I'd never heard of. So it seems to me that once we are ready and we have this desire, all sorts of things, like maybe you're listening to this now and hearing something, and something clicks. You know, there's something in what you say, something in what I say, and you hear something. And maybe, you know, 6 months ago, you wouldn't have heard that. It is literally, there is when there is a readiness, I think there's a saying, isn't there, in spiritual circles, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And everything, once we are ready to do something different, everything is our teacher. You start to see it everywhere. You see ideas and things. And then openings happen. You know, you learn to understand yourself. Because one of the biggest things is we have to be ready to see the role that we've played in this. And I think very often, I know that was something that over the time when I've worked with people, that has been one of the most difficult things. And I know, like, as I said, I had 3 children, and one of the biggest hurdles for me was the realization of the part that I had played in this, and the fact, you know, I really, really intensely hated myself for what my children had been through. And then kind of coming to that, wow, but you could have done something different and you didn't. That was that was a toughie. And it is a little bit, it is one of those when it's like, okay, so if I can see that and accept that and forgive myself for that, that starts to heal my children. That starts to change things. And it was kind of that had me being, okay, I have to forgive myself, because yes, you know, I played a huge part in this. There's no, to me, it's 50-50. It was me as much as it was anyone else. And it's like, okay, so accepting that and then seeing the mess that my children are in, the temptation to hate myself and punish myself was huge. And then it's like, right, okay, all that does is keep you going in the same direction. It keeps you trapped in that. You continue, if you hate yourself and punish yourself, you continue to cause problems for your children. If you show them that total forgiveness, that's the way out. And it allows, you know, I have seen, because of the forgiveness that I have had for myself and then conversations I've had with my kids, when I have seen them, because a lot of the conditioning they had, a lot of the behaviors they saw, you know, if they start to go down a path in that way, it's kind of like, right, okay, you have to forgive yourself. And then we can have that conversation, because it was like, you know, they can see that me forgiving myself was the only way forward for all of us. And definitely there were times when they were like, well, you know, you don't deserve, it was terrible, we went through some terrible things. But then ultimately, through conversation and beginning to see, it's like, yeah, that's the only way, isn't it? We have to learn to love and forgive ourselves, no matter what we've done, what happened. And so, yeah, there is within this, you know, the desire to do it, and then the readiness to forgive yourself, the readiness to forgive anyone that appeared to do something that was against you, the readiness to do that and to understand the implications of doing that is incredibly useful.
It's huge.
Yeah.
I mean, people talk about forgiveness, but I think just hearing you talk, it's really apparent to me now that, like you say, when we're caught in a non-forgiving story, whether that's about ourselves or somebody else, there's a restriction that comes with that. There's a tightness,
Absolutely.
there's a,
Yeah.
oh, I can just feel it. It's just horrid.
Mm.
It's a, and living from that place, what we both know, and obviously we both share in the work we do, is that behavior flows automatically from
Yeah.
there. So
Yes.
if we are living in a feeling of restriction, in a feeling of non-forgiveness, of judgment, of hatred, of whatever it is, our behavior and our actions flow out of that. They can't not flow out of that, right?
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
that's what you say when you say about how we play a role in this.
Mm.
When you understand that, you start to see that, because the opposite is also true. So when you talked about, you know, knowing, and where did that come from? Like, it's magical, isn't it? Amazing. Like, there was
Yes. Yeah.
just a knowing that,
Yeah.
no, not that. Like, I've got to
Mm.
let this go.
Yeah.
I've got to stop beating myself up, blaming myself, hating myself for what's happened. I've got to just let that go. And when that's parked, if you like, and whatever word you want to use for that, forgiveness,
Mm.
letting go, turning away, whatever, but I hope that people can feel the difference in that, just as we're talking about it, the relief of,
Yeah.
oh, I couldn't have done any better.
No.
It
And
just,
the other person, you know, this is what I
right.
see. I feel nothing but love and compassion for my ex-husband. You know, how could he have done anything different? With what looked real and true to him, there was not another option. And so to me, it is the important thing here is to open our minds enough to see that we have other options. And that to me is the work that I do. It's not about forcing people to do anything. It is just opening people's minds to see the possibility. And that's the same with forgiveness, you know, forgiving. I know a lot of people when I work with them who've been in situations like this, and there's been some terrible things that have happened, and it's like, I can't forgive the person. And I really see that if we hold ourselves against anything, then at some point, those things that we love are going to turn against us too, because ultimately all of us are all of it. And so, and forgiveness isn't about saying, oh, you know, the behavior, oh, it's fine, you know, anyone can behave the way that they don't. But massively what I see around an understanding of the principles is it's really pointing to life works from the inside out, life works the other way around. And I can see a little bit, like you said, you can see, and I can see, you know, how I got insecure, how I got there, but I was going in the wrong direction. That's not how life works. And it's the same here. When we hold on to anything, we hold something against someone, however badly wrong they seem to have done us. If we hold on to that, that is like, you know, holding on to a load of poison and expecting someone else to be affected. No, we cannot escape that if we hold on to that. And we don't, if we go back to the thing I said about Byron Katie saying, don't be careful because you'll hurt yourself. Trying to hold on to something like that so we don't get into that situation again, I will tell you now, you are way more likely to get into a situation again while you're holding on. If you can find a place within you to forgive and move forward, the likelihood that you will diminishes massively, because life does not, we don't, if, oh gosh, I've got to be careful, oh gosh, I've got to be careful of that thing. We keep that in our awareness and we bring it to us. We bring more of that experience to us. Whereas if we can let it go and trust, like you said, you know, where is this power that we know what to do? What is intuition? What is this amazing power that we have? If we can lean into that power instead of holding on to these things that appear, you know, to be helping us, it blows your mind what happens. You know, my family is such an example of that when we are prepared to let go of all of that and not hold on to it, what is possible, what is achievable, what can happen. And these, you know, cycles and circles of behavior can change. So yeah, it is. It has to be, I guess, spoken through and understood what is being pointed to, but it is so crucial to forgive and move back into flow and alignment with the truth of who you are.
Yeah. And I could really feel that when you were talking about the holding on to what's happened, and holding on to, you know, I need to protect myself. I need to make sure that doesn't happen. I loved how you described it as holding on to poison, because it's that just felt so understandable.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, we know if we were to hold on to something poisonous, that we're going to get poisoned constantly. It's going to keep entering the system. It can't not, because we've got it, we're holding it, it's entering, you know. And what do we would know with that, in that situation, we would know to put it down. Like, as soon as we understood this poison, this thing that I'm holding on to is poison, and as I hold on to it, it keeps delivering shots of poison.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my gosh, I will put that down. Why I would not keep holding it? It makes no sense. But we don't understand that with thoughts. We don't understand that with holding on to the past and experiences and things that have happened to us. We think that we need to do that to keep ourselves safe in the future. And what you're saying is no, because if you keep thinking that, you're going to keep moving with it with you. It's going to keep going with you into whatever you do. And
Absolutely.
so that's such a powerful message. It's like, what if you could just play around with, okay, this person's done something bad to me, or this thing happened in the past and it was awful, and I can't let it go because I've got to keep remembering it to keep me safe now. What if none of that was true? And what if just for a moment you could consider what life might be like if you knew nothing of that from this moment forth? And then what might you do from that place? And it, like you say, it's a totally different life. It's a totally different paradigm, a totally different experience. And it's available to all of us in every, not just in,
No,
bad
no.
relationships or whatever. This is universal. This is across the board. Like anywhere that we're holding on to something that's not serving us, if you like, that's poisoning us. It's making us feel restricted.
Yeah, it does. And I see, in my relationship now, I just don't hold on to anything in any way. And what I see is it allows me to show up fresh to any situation, and it allows my partner, Russ, to show up fresh. And the way that works is it's unbelievable. You're working with the system, with the intelligence that's built into life, and that it's built into life to protect us, to take care of us. It's not our job. We don't have to do that. And what we have to do, so I'm not saying don't put a fire guard on the fire, don't all of these things that we do, but it occurs to us to do it.
Yes.
We can trust that if something like that needs to be done, it will occur to us in the moment to do it. We don't have to lie awake at night worrying about how to protect ourselves and how to keep safe. It's like if we are in tune with who we are, if we will allow ourselves to fully be who we are, we have this intelligence that courses through us that keeps us safe, and we can 100% trust it. And I can see, that is now how I live my life. I am not careful ahead of time. I've got common sense, and I use my common sense, and I stop at red lights, and all of that kind of thing. But I don't protect myself ahead of time. I trust in the moment. I move into what is going to happen next with a knowing that if there is something that I need to know or do, it will show up for me. And that I can see is how abusive relationships don't happen. Anything, these healthy, happy, nice, and ups and downs, but there is so much more space in that for love and connection and understanding of each other, because all of us, we all live in our own personal reality. No two of us experience the exact same thing. And I know that was something that was hugely confusing, when I realized that, when I read that somewhere, and thought, oh my God, because most of the time I would obviously come to a situation or whatever, and I would do what makes sense to me. And then I would wonder why other people wouldn't do the same thing as me, because I would assume they were experiencing the same as me. And it's like, well, why would you not do what I do? And just the realization that their experience is not the same as mine. And so, they will only do, as you said, our behaviors come from the thoughts that we believe to be true and the experience that we're having. And we can only behave in ways that make sense to us. And that was a game changer for me, realizing, oh, you're not actually seeing the same thing as me, which is why you're doing that weird, wacky thing that makes no sense to me. But it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, and there's so much compassion in that, isn't there? Because you
Yeah.
start to see that, oh, they're not wrong. I'm not right. This
Yeah.
is how I do it because
Yeah.
of whatever I believe and whatever I've been told and whatever.
Mm.
And other people haven't been told this, haven't been given the same memos. Like they've had different memos, totally different experience given the memos they've had.
Mm.
And that's hugely helpful to understand that when it comes to relationships.
It's been a game changer in my relationship now, because obviously I don't judge my partner by what I think is right now. I'm kind of like, oh yeah, he's seeing this completely different, isn't he? And that's okay. I know that, I can see that. And so it's like, oh, okay, yeah, that totally makes sense to him. Weirdo. No. but it's but it is like, oh right, okay, I'm not judging him by my beliefs and what I think is right and wrong. And there's much more space in there for love, connection, conversations, laughter, all sorts of things come out of that understanding and knowing.
Wow, I mean, that is like a whistle stop even tour of your incredible experience, behavior, life. I mean, yeah, I've heard you talk for much longer than that, but I think that seems like a really beautiful place to kind of stop for now. And there's two things I'm wondering. Firstly, if somebody's listening to this and they're having difficulties in a relationship, or they are experiencing, I guess not even in a relationship, just a challenging time, is there something that you can guide them towards? I mean, obviously you've said a lot in here, but if there's one thing that they could do right now, what might that be?
I would say be very, very gentle with yourself, because I know from my own experience and from the experience of talking to a lot of people in all sorts of difficult situations, I think we are incredibly hard on ourselves when, you know, if we're somewhere and whatever, our relationship isn't going right, we haven't anything, whatever it is, if something in our life isn't going right, we can be incredibly hard on ourselves. And as I said, you know, life works the exact opposite way. And to me, there is definitely go gently, that loving and forgiving, because I can see that I didn't beat myself into change. I loved myself into change. And so, you know, be gentle, be kind.
Oh, wow. Yeah, put it down and then see what makes sense. Beautiful. And then what that leads me on to, how can people get in touch with you if they wanted to talk to you about anything they're going through, or find out more about what you do in the world? How might they do that? Because obviously you are a wonderful coach and you have an amazing business and all sorts of offerings. So how might people get in touch with you?
Well, our business is called Dare to Be You. I don't know, is this going to be on YouTube? It's
Yes.
behind me. Dare, the number 2 and the letter B and you, Dare to Be You. You can Google that and find me. I'm Debra Simmonds on Facebook. I love people reaching out to me. I have got a YouTube channel. I'm Debra Simmonds on YouTube. I love making videos. I'm very happy to have conversations and make videos if people bring things up. I always love having conversations with people. And like you say, if this has brought up something for anyone and they want to reach out and ask me a question or speak, I'm completely open about this, completely happy to share anything, to explain further, go deeper. If somebody wants to, I'm happy to do that. But yeah, website daretobeyou.co.uk, Debra Simmonds. I'm sure if you just put me into Google or somewhere, I'm sure I'll pop up somewhere.
And I will put links in below in the show notes and below on YouTube. So thank you so much for being here with me. It has been an absolute pleasure to have you, and I look forward to catching up with you soon.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you very much for having me. Thank you. Thanks.
Bye for now.
Bye.